What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today, after a very long wait for some hero bugs to get fixed and a long time planning out these videos, we are finally going to be starting my new hero guide series for Battlefront 2, starting off of course with General Grievous. Obviously he has been in the game for quite some time now, and I had originally planned to make this hero guide much sooner. However, as I'm sure you all know, he was extremely buggy on release, and so eventually I decided to hold off on redoing all of these hero guides until 2019 to make sure that they were as accurate as possible. Well, 2019 has finally rolled around, and so there's no better time to get stuck into this video. Now, these hero guides are going to be absolutely packed full of information, and so we're just going to go ahead and get straight into it in hopes that I don't drag the video on for too long. So we're just going to start off with Grievous's base stats, and all of these stats have been double checked by both myself and one of my subscribers as well. So thanks a lot for your help, my man. You know exactly who you are, and there will be a link in the description where you can find his Reddit post with all of these stats. Now, we both tested these in arcade, and while I'm 99% sure all of these stats do transfer over to multiplayer, just bear in mind that there is always a chance that some stats may change from arcade to multiplayer. So if you do see any stats that don't seem right, then definitely feel free to let me know down in the comments. So first off, we're going to take a look at his base HP, and he does actually have the equal highest health of all the heroes and villains in the game, coming in at a whopping 800 HP. He does also have a really high pool of health regen too, coming in at 250, which is actually the equal second highest in the game. So overall, his health and health regen stats are up there with some of the best in the game, making him the absolute tank that he is. Now, his weapon, or should I say weapons of choice, are of course his blue and green coloured sabres, with some being given to him by Count Dooku and the others being taken from the fallen Jedi that he did manage to kill. He does a lot of damage with these sabres, dealing 130 damage per hit from the front and 160 per hit from behind, which is up there as the highest of all the characters in the game, even higher than Darth Vader. His swing speed is pretty much on par with most of the other sabre users. He can essentially swing his sabre 3 times every 2 seconds, which is pretty much identical to most of the other characters, so nothing too special there. He does, however, have a very short lunge distance and a very low stamina pool, which is fair enough considering he does deal so much damage per hit. If you're not too sure what I mean by lunge distance, that's essentially how far forward he'll move when you do swing your sabres, and so because his lunge is so short, you will need to make sure you're very close to your enemies before you do try and attack. Otherwise, there is a good chance you'll be swinging wildly at thin air, which can often lead to a very quick and very frustrating death. Now, in terms of his sprint speed, he is slightly slower than almost all the other sabre characters in the game, but he is still ever so slightly faster than the regular trooper classes. He does also have a high jump as well, although technically it's not really a force jump since he can't use the force, and so he does jump slightly lower than almost all the other characters in the game. Now, moving on to his abilities, and even though he's already a great character just because of his high health pool and high damage stats, his abilities do actually make him even better as well. His L1 ability is called Thrust Surge, and this just sends Grievous lunging forward with all 4 sabres, stabbing the enemy and knocking them to the ground. On impact, this ability deals 160 damage, and like I mentioned, it will knock your enemy to the ground, so even if the initial hit doesn't kill them, they'll usually be pretty easy prey anyway. It does use a lock-on system, and the best way to tell if you have locked onto an enemy is by looking for a white outline around their body, which indicates that the ability should land a hit. Thrust Surge is a really good ability for getting enemy heroes off their feet and opening them up to take more damage, and seeing as Grievous is a little slower than most characters, it is also really good for making up ground if an enemy does try to run away. In terms of weaknesses though, it can be a fairly buggy and inconsistent ability at times. Sometimes it seems like it should work and it just straight up won't, and when it doesn't work it can land you in a lot of trouble, so just make sure to use it when you know it won't get you killed if it does manage to fail. Moving on to his L1R1 ability, and this one is called Unrelenting Advance. Just like we see in Revenge of the Sith, Grievous pulls out all 4 sabres and spins them quickly in front of himself, allowing him to block any blaster bolts from the front and also dealing damage to anyone who gets in his way. This ability will stay active for 5 seconds, and it does deal 110 damage per hit, so if you can trap someone in a corner with this ability, it can be absolutely deadly. It seems to be extremely good at closing down their enemies without taking any damage or wasting any stamina by blocking, and like I said, if you can trap an enemy hero with it, then you can take them out without much of a fight at all. It does have its weaknesses however, as the track-like animation can often be hard to control, and if you do have enemies behind you, then you can be taken out very easily, so make sure to only do it if you do know you're safe from the sides and from behind. Moving on to the R1 ability, which is called Claw Rush, and this is by far his best ability, if not one of the best abilities of any character in the whole game. Claw Rush sends Grievous crawling forward extremely quickly, dealing 130 damage to anyone that he hits and also knocking anyone off their feet. Now, some people don't know this, but if you do cancel the ability by pressing R1 just as you've hit an enemy, you'll actually stand on them dealing a second lot of damage, so essentially you can one-hit kill any regular trooper in the game if you do time it right. This ability is amazing at closing down enemies who are too far away for a regular attack, and even if you don't cancel it at the right time, you'll still usually be able to take them out straight away without too much trouble at all. It can often be hard to control though. If you're on a map with no edges, then you definitely need to be very careful not to fall off the edge and end your kill streak. So that's it for all of his base stats and abilities. Now we're going to move on to some of the more important stuff, starting with his best star cards for Galactic Assault. Now, in my old hero guides, I would usually go over 4 or 5 different cards, but simply to save some time, in these updated guides, I'm going to just cover the 3 cards that I personally think are the best for General Grievous. Obviously, it really does come down to personal preference, so these definitely aren't the only cards that you can use, but these are just the 3 cards that I think are the most important and most well-suited cards for Galactic Assault. So the first card I'm going to recommend is his Beating Heart star card, and this one essentially just gives Grievous more health regeneration. Fully maxed, this can give you an extra 100 HP regeneration, which means you can actually go all the way down to 450 HP before you lose any of your actual health pool, so definitely a very handy card to use to make his health even stronger than it already was. The second card I'm going to recommend is his Sith Train star card, and this one gives Grievous extra damage with his lightsaber attacks at the expense of draining 40% more stamina. Now that does sound like a lot of wasted stamina, but this card actually makes it so that you can one-hit kill any regular trooper other than a heavy, which is much more useful than you may think, and overall this is definitely one of the most useful cards you can use when playing Galactic Assault. The third and final card I'm going to recommend is of course his Health on Kill card, which is called Cyborg Rage, and as I'm sure you all know, this will award you with 20 HP per trooper kill, which is essential for going on those long kill streaks and playing the objective without dying. Fully maxed, this will also give you 100 HP per hero kill, and with Grievous being so dominant against other heroes, this is a very easy way to earn back some health if you do happen to take a bit of damage. Now, like I said, these are the 3 cards that I'd personally recommend using. However, if you do disagree, then definitely feel free to let us all know down in the comments section, as there really is no right or wrong when it comes to something like choosing star cards. So now moving on to some of the best maps to choose Grievous on when you are playing Galactic Assault, and the top 3 that I've picked are Kashyyyk, Death Star and Naboo. Now obviously this doesn't mean that these are the only 3 maps that you should choose him on, and honestly there's another 3 or 4 maps that could have easily taken a place in the top 3 as well. But if I had to pick 3 maps that I could only ever play as Grievous on, then these would definitely be my own personal choices. I know a lot of you guys will most likely disagree with some of these choices though, so like I said, definitely feel free to let me know down below if there are some other maps that you do prefer. Now as for some tips for Galactic Assault, and the main one that I want to say is to make sure you stick to close quarters areas as much as possible. Obviously with the one-hit kill card equipped, as well as the Claw Rush and Unrelenting Advance abilities at your side, clearing out close quarters rooms or hallways with Grievous is definitely the best way to go about getting some easy kills. It's not very often that you can run into Grievous in a hallway and survive, so if you do stick to these kinds of areas, then you can definitely do very well in a short period of time. Another tip is to not be afraid of enemy heroes scattered throughout the map. Obviously you don't really want to go hunting for heroes, as that can easily get you killed, but if you do come across a hero and there aren't a bunch of enemies surrounding you, then by all means try and take on the fight head first. Grievous is easily the best character in the game when it comes to hero versus villain combat, and so most of the time if you do stand your ground and play it smart, you're either going to send the enemy hero running back to safety, or you're going to take them out and earn yourself an easy 100 HP at the same time, which is a massive help to both you and your team. As for some weaknesses in Galactic Assault, he can struggle a bit when he gets caught in wide open spaces, since he is a little bit slower than most other characters, and so you do need to make sure that you're being extra careful when you do run into any wide open areas. His abilities can also be dangerous at times due to the bugs and inconsistencies, so like I mentioned earlier, just make sure to pick the right time to use them, and other than the Claw Rush ability, just make sure that you are relatively safe before you do choose to use them. So that is going to be it for the Galactic Assault tips. Now we're just going to move on to some tips for the hero vs villain game modes. Now starting off with the best star cards, and the first one I'm going to mention is the Sith Train card, which I did already mention for Galactic Assault as well. This one is pretty self-explanatory. More damage per hit is obviously going to increase your chances of winning hero battles, so this one is definitely one of the most important cards for these modes. As for the other 2 cards, you can run the exact same setup as I mentioned for Galactic Assault, as those cards can still be very helpful in these game modes, but personally I swap both of those health cards for his Unrelenting Advance cards, as this ability can be absolutely dominant against enemy heroes. The The first one is called Ceaseless Assault, and this pretty much just gives you reduced damage while using Unrelenting Advance, which obviously kind of speaks for itself, as it's just going to allow you to survive for longer while using this ability. The second replacement card is called Deadly Slashes, and this one goes the opposite way, giving you more damage output while using Unrelenting Advance. Now with these two cards combined, you'll take less damage as well as deal more damage to your enemies with this ability, which is definitely one of the better combinations to choose from. Now, moving on to some tips for the hero game modes, and honestly, there's actually not all that much I need to say when playing as General Grievous. In my opinion, he's by far the best character in the game in these game modes. His high HP and high damage output really do speak for themselves. All I can say is make sure not to spam your attacks, keep a close eye on your stamina, and definitely try to keep it under control as much as possible. Try and combine your abilities with your regular attacks and keep dashing from side to side, and most of the time, even a very good opponent is going to struggle to beat you, especially in a one-on-one. As for his weaknesses, Blaster Heroes are probably the only weakness he really has in these modes, but even then they aren't really that big of a deal if you do manage to play your cards right. Like I mentioned earlier, stick to the close quarters areas of the map and try and keep your Claw Rush ability available whenever you are heading into an area with long lines of sight. If you do find yourself in trouble, having the Claw Rush there to either close ground on your enemy or scurry away to safety is definitely going to save you a lot of trouble in those kind of situations. So that is going to be it for the first updated hero guide of 2019, guys. As this is a very different style of guide than I've ever done before, I'd love it if you guys could leave some feedback down in the comments on what you thought you did or didn't like about the video. Let me know if any of the overlays were too much or not enough, whether the video was too long or not long enough, and let me know whether there was anything you think I should have added or anything you think I should leave out in future hero guides. If you did enjoy the video, then make sure to leave a like down below. Not only does it help support the channel, but it does also show me that you guys do want to see more of these updated hero guides. The next guide will be an Obi-Wan guide, which should be up within the next week, so definitely keep an eye out for that one as well. If you are new to the channel, then definitely feel free to subscribe and make sure to turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on any more Battlefront 2 guides or live streams. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
Crush them.